Welcome to the Starter Girlz Podcast, your ultimate source of inspiration and empowerment. We're here to help women succeed in every area of their lives: career, money, relationships, and health and well-being, while celebrating the remarkable journeys of individuals from all walks of life who've achieved amazing things. Whether you're looking to supercharge your career, build financial independence, nurture meaningful relationships, or enhance your overall well-being, the Starter Girlz Podcast is here to guide you. Join us as we explore the journeys of those who dare to dream big and achieve greatness. I'm your host, Jennifer Loading, and welcome to this episode. Welcome to another episode of the Starter Girlz Podcast. Wherever you are tuning in today, we are so thrilled to have you. And I am excited about another fabulous guest that we have coming on today. In life, our reality is shaped by our perceptions and the way we communicate. My guest grew up in a challenging environment, learning early on that no two people experience the world the same way. This realization led to deep understanding of the power of communication, not just as a means of exchanging words, but as a vital tool for connection and empathy. Today, we're going to be learning about her journey, and I'm so excited to chat with her. But before we bring her on, I do need to do a quick shout out for our sponsor. This episode is brought to you by Walt Mills Productions. Need to add excitement to your YouTube videos or some expert hands for editing? Look no further. Walt Mills is the solution you've been searching for. Walt is not only your go-to guy for spicing up content, he's the force behind a thriving film production company with numerous titles in the pipeline. Always on the lookout for raw talent, Walt is eager to collaborate on film and internet productions. With a background deeply rooted in entertainment and promotion, Walt Mills leverages years of skills to give you the spotlight you deserve. Want to learn more about Walt and his work? Head on over to waltmillsproductions.net and let your content shine. All right. And with that, my guest, Dr. Heather Browne, is a distinguished relationship expert known for her work in conscious communication. With her profound awareness that no two people share the same reality, Dr. Heather has dedicated her career to helping individuals and couples transform their relationships through effective communication. As a TEDx speaker, best-selling author, and seasoned therapist, she's been featured in prestigious publications like Psychology Today and on platforms such as ABC 7 News. Her best-selling book, Speaking with the Heart, Transforming Your Relationship and Communication with Compassion and Connection, has earned her international acclaim, including the International Impact Book Award. Her unique insights into communication and relationships have made her a sought-after speaker and trusted voice in the field. So welcome, Dr. Heather Browne, to the Starter Girlz Podcast. So excited to have you here today.
What an amazing introduction. Thank you. I'm really delighted to be here. So thank you for having me. And listeners, thank you for tuning in.
Yeah. I always love the introductions. It's my favorite part.
We sound so amazing.
I know. Every time I do it, everybody's like, wow, I love that introduction. I'm like, you know what? I think it's, I came from 22 years in Mary Kay in leadership. And, I went to a lot of events and they always did these incredible introductions. And it didn't really matter how great you were. You always got an amazing introduction. And so I just got, accustomed to doing that. And it's so fun to hear that, like when somebody says those things about us, we're like, man, I'm pretty cool.
And you don't say it that often. It's on your bio,
Right.
But also as a guest, it makes you really excited to then talk, which is beautiful because the energy is lifted and high and let me bring my nuggets to you.
Yeah. Well, and I know I looked at your work and what you're doing and I watched your TEDx. It was so funny. I put the TEDx on to watch you and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to look at the beginning of this and get a snippet of it. And then you captivated me. I just ended up watching the whole thing and I was like, man, this is good. So I love your energy and I love what you're talking about. And you have just a way with the communication. And I think that's what this is all about, is the communication. So I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Thank you so much.
All right. So let's start this thing off because I'm all about the journey. I love stories. I tell people I am just a sucker for a good story. And I think that's what makes this podcast so fun, is hearing, how you incredible people have come to the places that you are. So I'd love to talk a little bit about what brought you to where you are today.
Sure. It's in my TEDx. It's a big piece of who I am, but my mom was a paranoid schizophrenic. And so living with someone who truly is not in this reality was bizarre, hard, strange, challenging. And I didn't know it for a while. It wasn't until I was 8 where it was confirmed in a situation in public that the world saw that mom was off. But there's a place in mental health that I think we don't really recognize too, which is though we don't understand where that person is gone or what they're believing or what they're experiencing, it is theirs. And what we tend to do in this world is if you don't believe what I believe, if you don't think what I think, you're wrong. And I needed to be able to connect with my mom and not just have her wrong and crazy. And so I had to look for ways to try to be able to not denounce her reality, not just tell her she was crazy like everyone else did, but let her reality be her reality and still care for her, love her, and try to reach her. So in therapy, what I tell everyone is, partner number one, you are 100% right for you. Partner number two, you're 100% right for you. The question isn't, is the other right? The question is, where do we connect? And so my life passion has been to kind of flip communication on its head and to move it away from the words, which are a very small part, and to start instead with compassion first. If I care for you, and then I find out, how do I help you connect with me? Where are you going to run away? Where are you going to push back? Where are you fearful? Where are we wanting to go? Then we can come up with some agreements together and we can walk this bridge together. And then the words come. And when you do communication like that, it's completely different. It's completely different. When you do everything with compassion and with care, it's different. You might not have a different outcome, but it will feel different. My mom was still in a different reality whenever I was compassionate and kind toward her, but she wasn't isolated and scared, or at least as much. And that's a beautiful thing.
I
And
agree.
we're
And I
not
do
we're
remember
not taught this.
No, and I do remember your TEDx talking about that, the storm. I remember this part because it was interesting when I was listening to this. My husband was in the kitchen, and I remember telling him, "Listen to this story. You've got to listen to this because this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about. Compassion. And you're so right. And I'm not even a therapist, but I work with a lot of people, and I feel like I will back this up, and I will say this: in all my years working in Mary Kay, I learned a lot about dealing with women. I learned a lot about, and I didn't grow up in a house where we communicated very well, but I learned a lot about having to communicate. When I started doing the podcast, I had a lot of learning in communication. I've interviewed over 400 people, between my shows, and so many different styles, different people. And of course, we know, they have the DISC model and the Myers-Briggs and all that, so you can learn. But I really had to learn to listen to people. And I feel like it's really a layer of this because everything we were taught, Mary Kay, was always about, sandwiching negativity with praise, how we deliver things to people, when you're trying to get things across. And so it's so interesting to hear you talk about this because I can hear all this. It's like I have these conversations, and sometimes people will say things and I'm like, but maybe don't say that. That's not bridging the gap. That's not going to get anybody to want to be your friend or listen to what you're saying right now. Rethink what you're saying, So I love that you're talking about this because for me, I feel like this is like a big thing. Like all the time I hear people talking and I'm just like, no, you're not helping the situation right now,
Yeah. And that's the key. Like, are we connecting? Are we moving together? Or are we having a bristle? And you will completely get this. Where there's a bristle, where there's resistance, where there's a trigger, it is gold. And we're all scared of it. We all say we don't want it. I hate conflict. I'm conflict avoidant. What you're really saying is, I don't want to know how to love you. That is what you're saying. When you're triggered and I'm like, I don't want to deal with the trigger, I'm saying, I don't want to love you or myself. So instead of being fearful of these things happening, if we say, okay, growing moment, this is going to show me how to stay more solid within myself, show you what I need more so with you, and create a possibility for us to go beyond. People are so fearful of triggers, and they're such a gift, because what it is I think what happened to me with my father is going to happen to me with you because it's feeling the
Mm-hmm.
same. But if I can separate my experience with my father and change this moment with you to be different, now together we have given me a whole new reality. That
Yeah.
is a sacred gift in a relationship. Maybe I've got someone who's been raped. Maybe I've gone through this numerous times, but this time, can I create safety for myself? And will you support that with me so I can start to look at the world going forward, at least in this moment, differently? There's now a different possibility. Doesn't mean
Right.
it's going to be what you want, but it's a different possibility. And that's the place as humans, we get so stuck. We for some reason will say, well, this is the way it's always been. And my response is, well, but do you like it? And they say, oh, no, I hate it. I'm like, well, then why don't we decide it could be different?
Right.
If you
Right.
don't like the way it's been, let's figure out what to do to move you into a different scenario for yourself. I heard
Yeah.
someone sent me I have a lot of people that reach out to me with beautiful quotes and slogans, which I just love. And a good friend sent me one today, and it was a billboard, and it said, go back to those places where you have cried and laugh now. Change the narrative. And I went,
Mm.
ah, but that's what
Yeah.
it is. Let me
Right.
give myself this new moment because this moment is new, and let me change myself going forward. We don't empower ourselves. Mary Kay is really
Right.
good at empowering women.
Yeah.
In our
Yeah.
world, we don't, and that's why Mary Kay is so successful because women haven't really been very empowered. It's so important that we give that to ourselves and we allow others to empower themselves. There's
Yeah.
no reason for us to push anybody else down.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
so good. I was talking to a gal right before I got on the phone, got on here with you, and we were talking about someone had presented something to her about she loved quitters. And she said because quitting allowed you to start again. And the gal that I was talking to, she goes, I'd never heard of it quite put that way. But to
Right.
your point, right? Like reframing, that's reframing a word, obviously, right? The way you perceive the word, okay? But I think, like what you're saying too is, yes, we get stuck in it. I think it's like this in everything, business, everything, right? We get stuck in a past event, the cycle of it. And then we fear that it's going to keep happening, like it's going to keep doing, instead of just looking to reframe the event. And that's what I like for me. And I know that we all do this, but I always like to tell myself, when we get in those situations where we kind of repeat patterns, I'm talking about me specifically. I like to do what you're talking about. Like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm sick of being controlled by this situation. How am I going to make this different? Like, how do I reframe this? Because fearing that situation, then I almost feel like you're being a victim to that situation, and it keeps on controlling you, right? Rather than you saying, I'm going to change this and I'm going to make this outcome different. And it might not be perfect, but I'm going to change that narrative so it's a new narrative, right?
Yes. And until you say that, you'll hear people say, like, I hate my life. And you think about that, and what we're basically saying is, I'm a victim to the life that I have given myself.
Right.
What? Like, it's up to us to decide. And does it take a lot of work? Yeah, it does. But without that, you don't have the glories that you can have. And the more you learn to work with your ego, people say you need to kill the ego. You don't. You need to love the ego and say, like, I get what you're doing. You're keeping me human. You're keeping
Yep.
me in check.
Yep.
However, I'm not going to let you be the pilot. You can be the backseat driver when I need you as a backseat driver. I'll thank you and then I'll hush you. I have someone who's going through a difficult medical situation right now, and she has someone she's been speaking with who's very fear-based. And
Okay.
she said, I just can't get her thoughts out of my head, so now I'm stuck. And I said, what an odd choice. And she said, what do you mean? And I said, lima beans are nasty. And she goes, oh, I don't think so. I like them. And I said, huh, my thought didn't stick. Why did that other person's stick? And she said, wait, say that again. I said, I gave you my thought. You don't agree.
Right.
Why are you agreeing with someone that you think their thought is destructive to you? And she just went, oh my gosh. I'm like, let's empower you right now for what your thoughts are. And the
Yeah.
fear that you're feeling from her narrative, there's something to find out there because there is something that connects you. So find out what it is you need to know to be able to move into action so you don't stay in fear. But we will say, we're so funny. We will say we don't have the power to change our thinking when someone has well, this is the way I was raised.
Yeah.
Okay, but none of us live exactly the way we were when we were raised.
Right.
So why do we give ourselves that cop out? It's so
Yeah.
funny. It's so funny. And the more you start to look at it, you think, wow, I really am I giving myself the best opportunities in all these different ways? What could I do that's more beautiful? What could I do that's more honoring? What could I do that's more inviting?
Yeah. No, this is good. I'm agreeing with you because this is how I think every day. When I talk to my clients, I'm like, yes, all these topics come up, and it's so funny because we give so much power to other people's opinions over ours, and it's so funny. And I think we're all guilty of that time to time, but I feel like I'm one of those strong-willed people that, like, would you tell me that, I'm like, I don't care what your opinion is. If I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, right? But you are so right. We do this. And there have been times, I'm sure, in all of our lives where somebody's given us opinion. We start to second, guess ourselves and compromise and make ourselves small. There's so much to this, I love it all. It's so much. So my question I want to ask you, so you're doing this on your own. Have you always been in your own practice, or did you come from the corporate space and move into this?
So when I was in my training, they have you, or at least my school suggest to do lots and lots and lots of places.
Sure.
So I worked suicide hotlines. I worked in a group setting.
Okay.
When I was able to with my license, I worked private practice. And so you go through different places to find what you want. I worked in a group home for 6 years.
Oh,
So I've
wow.
had a lot of experience with it.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted to do individual psychotherapy and couple psychotherapy. I knew my wheelhouse was working deeply and intentionally and not like in the periphery being one of many. And
Yeah.
I like the deep work. I like to see the transformative, you know, light bulb moments. So I've had my own practice now for 27 years.
Wow.
And they
Awesome.
say it's isolating. You have to be in a group. And I don't find that at all. I love what I do. I'm so grateful for what I do. And I have the most beautiful clients in the world. And then now with the TEDx and with the book, I have people reaching out from me internationally wanting me to coach them. And I said, well, first we got to make certain, the difference between psychotherapy and coaching.
Right.
And the ones who do, then we step into that. And the one who needs psychotherapy, I guide them for who they should see in their country. But that has been fun. That's been really fun. Yeah, but I love what I do.
I like it. I love it. And that's what I was asking. I love it. I like that you're really, well, and I think that's what psychology is, but I don't think everybody has that same kind of mindset about really doing the deep work of things. And it's interesting because a lot of the stuff that I do, I always tell people I feel like I do a lot of psychology because I feel like anytime you're working with people, they're complex human beings, you end up doing psychology, right? I can't say I have the fancy title, but I feel like I do a lot of that. It's interesting because a lot of, I always talk about you can't put Band-Aids on things. And it's so interesting. I was trying to describe to someone the other day, I was at an event on networking, and I was explaining to somebody that a lot of times when people come to me, they're coming to me because they want to work on their business, or that's usually what it is. They want to work on their business. And then somewhere around the 5th or 6th week, we have what I call the coming to Jesus moment. That's what I call it, because what ends up happening is I'm kind of repeating the same things over and over and over. And I'm like, the needle's not moving. And then I start to get like, okay, you're paying me and I don't want you paying me if we're not actually benefiting you, right? Like I want you to be benefiting from this. I feel very passionate about helping my clients. But when I talk about that coming to Jesus, that's usually where the baggage work comes in, because what happens is we realize that the reason that they're not moving is because there's something there that they're hung up about. And then it usually goes back to something else and back to something else and back to something else. And then that's where all the real deep work comes in. And I have a lot of different things I do there, but a lot of the psychology stuff comes in. We're like, okay, so you're having this fear of putting this script together, a script. Okay. Is it because you're afraid to get on the phone and actually use the script? Or is it because you're afraid of the success that might come from it? Is it because you're afraid of the fear of like the rejection? Like, you know what I mean? And then we got to go into okay, how are we going to reframe it? And how do we leave some of the emotion on it, you know? But I always joke, I laugh about that because I wait for it. It's like, I know it's coming, because it never happens right fully in the beginning, because a lot of times they don't know what they don't know yet. They're like, okay, my business isn't growing, help. You know,
but they think it is just the business and they don't realize the personal. I have 2 corporations that have worked with me, and they've had me work with every single person on their board individually. Yeah. And it has been fascinating to see all the threads and all the relationships and how it's worked. And it's also been incredibly beautiful to see the company's growth, because with one company, there were places that people were not being honest. And I called them on it. I'm like, you haven't shared that. Yep. I'm like, no. I'm like, how is your company going to be successful if this is hidden? Right. Like, what do we need to figure out to make this a safer place to share what you need to share? Because this is what's going on and people need to know the numbers. Right. I had the head CEO of a company that I've worked with. He calls me for emergency sessions, and he literally just needs me to reframe him. And he had gotten back this huge status sales report, and they did amazingly well. And then in one section, they were at 5%. So he's very emotionally intelligent. So he called me and he said, before I go in and ream them, I thought I should call you. And I said, great choice. And I said, take a super deep breath. He's like, okay, bring it. I said, you're going to go buy a huge box of donuts for the entire company. Good. And he said, I am. I said, yes. And then you're going to go in, you're going to say, guys, congratulations. Congratulations. We got all the stats back. We are amazing. We have done so well in every single area but one. And guess what? We're at 5%. Now we got to figure out why we are. But think how incredible we're going to be, and think how much we can grow, because we've got 95% possibility right now. And he goes, I'm off to the donut store. And then he called me afterwards. He said, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm like, beating them up and pushing them down is going to do nothing. But you've got to address it. So I love working with corporate. I love working with corporate. Yeah. It's so similar, but there's an added layer. Right. And you have to know how to work with that well. Yeah.
Yeah. No, this is good. I love it. And I love the donut thing. I totally love it, because that's something that I would do. But again, I think I learned that Mary Kay, because we used to always make everything like that. It was like, we got to talk about something, but we're going to make sure before we do it's all fluffed up. And I get it. People think sometimes that that's silly, but listen, you know what? I always say, listen, if you go in a room and somebody's got to talk something negative to you, you want to walk out still feeling valued and appreciated, right? If they come in, they start beating you down, you're going to walk out there and be like, I don't want to see that person again. Like, you're going to just have a negative energy about that communication. And so I think it's so important that we think about the choice of words and the energy and how we come across to people. I recognize we can't control how everybody views and sees us, but it is our responsibility to think about how we make people feel and how we want them to perceive us in a way. If we want them to feel comfortable around us, we've got to show that, you know?
Entrepreneurs, are you ready to level up your leadership skills? Tune in now for an exclusive offer designed just for you. This is my time. Did you know 63% of consumers prefer businesses aligned with their values? Recognizing your core values isn't just vital for business growth, it's the bedrock of effective leadership. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or an aspiring creator, identifying your core values is a key step in constructing the framework of a successful leader, enabling you to lead authentically, expand your business, and live life on your terms.
I never settled on play, putting the kettle to flame. I go 100 all day, foot on the pedal, no brakes. 10, 9, paid on my dues, waited in line, 8, 7.
Are you ready to access tools to kickstart your leadership journey? Unlock a treasure trove of insights and get your free resources at www.linktree/Jennifer Loading. Take that crucial first step toward realizing your leadership aspirations and elevate your leadership game today.
Ready to shine, brighter than all of the
When I do that I do that with my kids. I'm a widow. I used to do that with my husband.
Yeah.
I do it with friends, and I'll say, I love you. You are unbelievably important to me. And I want to share something with you because there's something that's going on in our relationship that's keeping me from being as close with you as I can be.
Good.
Do I have permission to share? And then what I say with my kids is, do I have permission to sharpen you? And they go, I'm like, yeah. And then I say, I need to be sure you can receive this with love.
Mm.
And they go, okay, Mom. And yeah, like a lot of love because this is a tough one. And they're like, okay. And then I say, the last 2 months, what I've been noticing is, and I'm concerned. When you go with the compassion, when you go with the donuts, it is that part. I care for you. You're important to me. My daughter used to come into my room and she'd be upset and she'd say, I'm so angry with you. We need to talk. And I'd always say, absolutely. Yeah. Do I have permission to say one thing first? She'd always say yes. And I'd look at her gorgeous, angry face. And I'd say, I just need you to know I love you so much. And she'd look at me and her eyes would start to melt and she'd go, Mom! I'm like, yeah. Now come here. Tell me to my face how I'm pissing you off. Let me know. Yeah. We'll figure this out. And then we didn't have some big, ugly brawl.
Right.
We don't have to hate people.
Right.
And we don't have to beat people up. We do need to learn, how do you make those bridges? How do you make those connections? How can I respect your thoughts and your feelings and not take it as a personal attack? We don't have to be offended.
Right.
And I realized this one day, I'm like, whoa. I don't have to be offended. I can decide that's your choice. And I'll give your listeners a golden nugget. When someone states something that to you is offensive, your butt looks fat in those pants, you drive too fast, whatever it might be, in your head, not out loud, say to you.
That's good.
Because if you say your butt looks fat in those pants, and I say to you, then I can say to myself, I think I look voluptuous and awesome. It's an opinion, but we take things that people say because they don't let you know this is my opinion and we believe it's truth. Now it means my butt's too fat. That's your opinion.
That's good. That's good. So to your point about your daughter, the reason I chuckled about that, because my middle child, when it doesn't work as much now. She's older now. All my kids are adults, but I need to try it on her again. But when she was little, when she would get mad, she was really one of those, and she still is to this day, one of those internal, like my son and I, my youngest and I are very verbose. It comes out. My two oldest daughters, very internal. They hold it in. Middle child, really stubborn. She would get so mad. And I would just see this look on her face. And so I knew she was mad. And so I would always go, Princess Paige. And she would be so mad. And I knew that if I did that to her, she would start smiling. She could never stay mad for long. So her face would go from that. And all of a sudden I start seeing this smile so I'd always say, you're so pretty today, Princess Paige.
Well, do we want to be mad?
Exactly.
Or do we want to be loved?
Right. Yeah.
The reason we're mad is we either are fearful, and so we're coming with that because it makes us feel stronger and we're going to attack and defend, or we're hurt and we're going to attack and defend.
Yeah.
So it's the opposite. We come off, controversial with the other, pressing against what we're fearful of happening.
Yeah.
Instead of, if you take a deep breath and ask yourself, like, why am I scared? Where am I hurting? And then you come and say, like, this is hard. This is hard for my heart. I'm scared you're going to leave me. That's very different than you don't love me and you don't value me.
Right.
To me, Jesus is the absolute best example, whether someone is religious or not. He knows he's the Son of God. He comes to everyone's door and he knocks. If you open, hallelujah. If you don't, he doesn't scream and yell. He doesn't push it down. He doesn't force you. If you open it, he says, hey, I'm Jesus. I'm the Son of God, and I'd love to sit down and talk with you. And if you say, hell no, he walks away. Why?
Yeah.
Because he waits for you to say, please, Jesus, would you come in? This is the key to relationship. If I wait for you to be open and willing to invite me, we're already on the same journey.
Mm.
But what we do is we say, we're going to talk about this now, and I don't care what you're doing, and get off the phone, and it's my way. And the other person pulls back and pulls back and pulls back and pulls back. But if you say, we need to talk about something really important, we need to figure out what we're going to do with your mom in the nursing home. If I wait until you say, oh, I don't want to have this conversation, but yeah, I'm ready. Now we're connected. So what happens is, if we're connected, the issue feels like an issue. When we're not connected, the issue holds all the power. And then it feels like the issue splits us. It's not true. We don't hold ourselves together. And to me, that is the key in relationship. How can I stay with you though we have different ideas here? Where can we find commonality?
Yeah.
What can I let go of? Where can we negotiate? How do we keep walking this in a way that we both come through feeling we compromised in a way that we can really do? Or if we can't, like the woman you spoke with, the person gives up and says, okay, that's it. Then we just won't buy a car because we can't decide on one. So want a moped? Want a horse? Want a bike? Like there's a place to say, we're not going to have any movement here.
What?
Let's let go.
Yeah.
And then choose something else.
This is good. All good, Heather. I love it. I love it. So I want to ask you and this is kind of more, this is all good. And I know we could talk forever on this stuff because I think this stuff is so important. I think it applies in all areas of our lives. It's not just about relationships. It's our work, our like interpersonal close ones, but it's also our ones at work. I mean, I feel like it's in all areas of our lives. We get into these binds where we can't find that commonality. And I always go back. One of my favorite books is Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective, where he talks about the win-win. I always love that. And he shows, I even use it in my program where he shows about the arm wrestle where he's arm wrestling with the guy and he lets the guy, he lets him win and then he reciprocates, the guy reciprocates and then they go back and forth. And the whole idea was showing that when you give in a little bit, you work together, that you are both willing to work together at that point. But when one resists, then the other one resists and you end up getting basically what you're saying in dialogue, right? You get this combative behavior, shut down, stonewalling, whatever it ends up being, right? Just combative behavior. So I love all this, but I want to talk a little bit about you and your journey too, because I think the listeners always like to know this kind of stuff. So it'd be fun. Are there any, I know you mentioned about your mother and her and the story living with her and having to learn to navigate that. And I think, despite having to go through that, it's an incredible gift that you were given because it allowed you to learn what you needed to do and to pursue it. But I'd love to know if there's any other, I guess maybe inspirations or anybody else in your life that you feel like has been kind of an inspiring factor or role model for you.
Pretty much anyone I come in contact with. I was on my own at 18. And so I had to do a lot of exploring and trying to figure out, like, how do you live at 18 in the world on your own?
Yeah.
Without a family. Like, it was wild. So the ones who came up really quickly, and this, like, the first books I read was Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I remember reading The Road Less Traveled by Pack. Love by Leo Basaglia. That was huge for me. He was huge for me. Bible, of course, has been very, very huge, and all the holy texts. Mark Nepo has been very important to me. The Book of Awakening. And then if you think about speakers, Brene Browne, of course, Oprah, I think is very important. Ram Dass, Alan Watts. Yeah, there have been so many.
Yeah, there's so many.
So many. People who really honor and embrace where people are on the journey and people who are willing to be raw and authentic. But I try to look at every single person as someone for me to learn from. And so the world is a great teacher for you. But those are my favorites. I've read tons of Brene Brown, tons of Mark Nepo, tons on Oprah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
A lot of spirituality and obviously a lot of psychology,
a lot of psychology
and all of that.
I think you learn a lot from dealing with people too. I think, you become sort of like a human. I always feel like I'm always just, the complexity of why people make the decisions that they do. And I had a mentor, one of many mentors, but this one mentor I worked with for a while, his mother was a psychologist, and he taught us. I learned so much working with him in the 2 years. It's so interesting to me that I spent all those years at Mary Kay, and I can coach, sell, book, and recruit. I can do all of those things for you. But it wasn't until, 22 years later, I got introduced to this mentor who had a mom that was a psychologist. And so I learned a lot of just valuable skills in psychology. I mean, I learned about the 5 stages of human development and all of these different things. Robert Keegan, you probably know what I'm talking about. Never heard this in my life. And after I looked at it and saw some of this stuff, I was like, oh my gosh, once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. Once you learn it, you look at the world so very differently. And it's so funny now because I feel like, when I'm every person that I deal with is like what you say, it's a new person with complexities. And you try to figure out why they make the decisions that they do, but you start seeing patterns. And he used to always say, that which we think is most personal is universal, meaning that a lot of the problems are very, very similar, right? The little nuances are different, but a lot of the problems kind of come back to the same things all the time. Fear, loss, and never. You tell us fear, loss, and never, And so once I learned all that, I was like, wow, when you really get back to that, it's like what you were talking about a while ago. We fear this, or we want to be loved, and this is not happening, so we're doing this. And you can see the patterns, and you'll start seeing a lot of people really kind of do the same behaviors. It's different little nuances in the way they do it, but they're kind of the same reasons that they're doing them are very similar.
When I studied the attachment styles, that love languages, of course, is very profound, and all of the development stages are. But when I studied attachment styles, because my mom killed herself, because I was on my own at 18, feeling completely unattached to everyone and everything, attachment became something that in my life was important to me also, and to really explore that. But when I was taking the quiz, I've been in psychotherapy off and on my whole life. I've done this for 27 years. I come through secure. And for the most part, I am. But 3-year-old Heather is still inside of me. And 3-year-old Heather at times is anxious. So as I'm reading the test and I'm looking at it and I'm not wanting to be anxious, wanting to come through secure. And when I did it, honestly, I did come through secure, but my heart said, but you need to remember little Heather. Yes, you're the strong, successful woman who's done well in the world. You need to remember little 3-year-old Heather in her bed, crying herself to sleep because she was all alone and mom and dad were not safe. And something shifted and I went, so when I see someone and they're anxious, instead of thinking they're weak, they're indecisive, I go to, oh, something happened where there was no place that was safe, probably when they're young. What can I do to help this? When you meet someone who's avoidant, before I would think dismissive, don't really care about people, whatever. No. Raised to not know the beauty of a relationship. raised without deep compassion and connection. It's not that that person is dissing you. That person is not giving themselves the opportunity to have what they don't know how to create because it wasn't given to them.
Sure.
And so then I start looking at people completely differently. It's without that judging of, oh, you're that way because there's something wrong with you. And it's, oh, wow, something really hard has happened for you to be in this turbulent state, or for you to freeze and not be able to go further, or for you to throw away people so quickly. How sad that is.
Right.
And I was so grateful for that awareness, not only for attachment and to understand attachment and to look at it, but to look at the aspect of, oh, I am to look at people differently, not just this is what you are. I'm to have deep compassion for how hard that must have been and how much that still impacts you now. Anybody who's a close friend of mine, you know, when I date, like I let them know there's a part of me, you won't see it often, but you will see it.
Right.
There's a part of me that gets a little 3-year-old who just wants a hug and wants to be reassured. And I love that little part of me and I own it. I'm like, can I have a hug? Cause I'm feeling a little insecure right now. And the person's like, yeah, sure. I'm like, okay. And I take it because little 3-year-old Heather gets scared sometimes.
Right. I love
in
it.
big 61-year-old body.
It makes me think of Tony Robbins saying we're all like 5-year-olds running around in adult bodies, right? Because we do. Our inner child comes up and those things, those wounds or whatever we have, they surface and they play out into our
depressed.
What?
It's the little child who's depressed.
Yeah.
And when we realize that, I did a workshop on joy and capturing joy. And what I went to was, what did you do when you were a little one? What are your favorite memories? Who were those people who were pivotal? You want to play with roly-polies. Okay, where in your life can you play with roly-polies or something like that now? Can you volunteer in gardens? One person, it was her grandma and baking and hugging her apron. I'm like, well, how about you take a baking course? How about, there's ways to cultivate that.
Yeah.
But where we're depressed is our little one inside feels like this isn't fun. This isn't good. This is just way too much work. And I know you're an adult, but I'm still a kid. Let me be a kid a little bit. And our little sweet little centers don't need much. Get bubbles. Go look at a sunset.
There you go. Paint.
A chocolate chip cookie. Like it doesn't take much.
Get the chalk out and go do hopscotch outside, right? It's funny. I talk about this stuff that finding those things that we love doing. And it's so funny because you will get this because I've often said this, that when I was a kid, I was a early 70s kid. So I would get my little boombox and I put my cassette tape in it and I would record myself talking on the tape. I don't even know what I was talking about. Who knows? But I would record myself. And then, time went by. This is probably elementary age. Time went by. Life happened. And I remember taking a public speaking class in college. And I was like, oh my gosh, I will never talk in front of a group of people ever again. Like I was so freaking shy and mortified. And I laugh about it now because essentially what I do is hit the record button. And I talk on a camera. Like when I was a kid, I didn't have a camera, but I talk and record myself talking and put it out there. So to your point about finding that inner child, people ask me all the time, when I do this podcast, I really enjoy doing it. I love having the conversations with you guys and gals and all of you amazing people because I like that communication. But it's so funny. They ask me that and I'm like, I kind of do what I like doing. And this is kind of what I did when I was a kid. Heck, if we had podcasting back then, I probably would have figured it out. I've been super good at it.
You would have.
Hey, I think it's great that you're talking about that. I love it. So one last question I want to ask you, because I know you got to get going. I would just love to know, you've said so many great things today and I can feel your passion and your energy in it. And I think that you've got to be an amazing psychologist or wherever the term you want to use, psychotherapist, whatever. You are amazing because you have warm energy. And I think people gravitate towards that. I think there's a warm receptiveness there and I love it. I would love to know from your perspective, what is it about this or what do you love about this work that you get to do?
It is so beautiful to help people realize that we are all made of love and we're here to love and that all the beauties of the world come through us because of love. And we all want more. And so when you really let yourself decide, I'm going to love me and I'm going to love this life and I'm going to choose to love you and I'm going to love this world as much as I can and I'm going to try to make it a better place, then every single day it becomes a joy in a lot of ways. And the places that are, the things you just have to do and all of that aren't as important. But for me, the key is so much to recognize, like, I get the opportunity today to share as much love as I possibly can with people who really want it and are probably thinking they're not going to get it. And they're going to be flooded with it. People will call me after I haven't worked with them for a little while and they say, I need to come in for a Heather fix. And I know exactly what they mean. They want to come in, get back to the core of who they are, get back to feeling like it's completely fine to take care of themselves, to laugh at themselves, and to step out feeling filled and fulfilled. And so that's what I enjoy the most. I enjoy watching people fall in love with themselves and fall in love with others, fall in love with me, fall in love with life. It's beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Well, if our audience wants to get in touch with you, maybe they want to pick up the book. They want to definitely check out the TEDx because it's an amazing speech. Like I said, I went initially to just be like I was going to listen to a snippet of it. And then you had me mesmerized on the whole thing. I was like, gosh, this is so good. It's so good. It's so powerful. Such a powerful story. But definitely to our audience, listen to that. But Heather, if they want to get in touch with you, get the book, find out a little bit more about you, maybe they want to work with you. I don't know. Where would you like us to send them?
My website is the Hub of Heather. So www.dreatherbroWne.com. I know it'll be in the show notes. Yeah. And because I've been doing this for a long time, there's a lot on my website, all the different ways you can work with me, coaching, psychotherapy, workshops. My book is on there. My TEDx is on there. I have a whole page of news clips and TV interviews and podcasts. I also have a whole page of freebies because I've made so many different freebies for different summits I've been on. And so I just put them all on my website. So go take a look. I have weekly newsletter. There's lots of ways. And if you just have a question, about something, reach out. If I don't have the answer, I'll try to find it for you. And if I can't, I'll try to guide you in the best way to find what it is that you're looking for. But I love hearing from listeners. And I'm honored to entertain any question you have about something that you might want to process a little bit and just don't know where the best place to go is. I'm happy to entertain that. Maybe it'll be me.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And thank you for all of that. We'll be sure, yes, to get the information in the show notes so we can find you and all your valuable content. Yes, I've been on your site, so I go in there and dig around a little bit. It's fun. Lots of good stuff.
Thank you.
Well, this has been awesome. And I so appreciate your time and your wisdom and all the things that you're doing. I want to commend you on your success. And like I said, I definitely can tell that you're passionate about it. And I think that's amazing. I love to see people happy about the work that they're doing because I think when you're happy, you make the world a better place. So that's why this is all important, what we do here. So thank you for that. And then, of course, absolutely. And to our listeners, thank you for supporting the show. If you found this episode, we hope that you found this episode inspiring and informative. And like I always say, go hit the like button, subscribe, comment wherever your favorite podcast platform is. That allows us to continue to share all this fabulous content. And as I always say, in order to live the extraordinary, you must start. And every start begins with a decision. You guys take care, be safe, be kind to one another, and we will see you next time.